So, welcome to Pittsfield Green Drinks. This event is organized by Berkshire Environmental Action Team, also known as BEAT. I'm Chelsea Simmons, BEAT's Education and Outreach Coordinator. If you don't already know about us, you can learn a lot more on our website at thebeatnews.org. Our mission is to work together with our community to protect the environment for wildlife in support of the natural world that sustains us all. So on our website, you can also easily stay up to date just on environmental happenings, primarily happening here and taking place in Western Mass, but also statewide and regionally. You can find local events that are sent to us by organizations on our community calendar. And then we also have an environmental jobs board that I guess just has local and regional jobs primarily. And then twice a month, we also go through the state's environmental monitor. And that's really just a list of big projects that we should be keeping an eye on in Berkshire County and the Pioneer Valley. And then we also have a page of public notices, and they're primarily Conservation Commission meetings. There's also other environmentally relevant notices in there as well. And then you can actually find all of that I just mentioned in our weekly e-newsletter, along with local, state, national, and global news. And if you'd like to subscribe to that, you can go to our current weekly newsletter page here and subscribe. So BEAT is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we actually get all of our funding from donations and grants. Programs like this one are only possible because of the people who support us. If you'd like to make a donation to BEAT, you can do so by going to this donate button up here on our website header. And thank you. And then next month, Elena Traster will be speaking for our Pittsfield Green Drinks. She is a professor up at MCLA in North Adams. She's in the Environmental Studies Department, and she'll be talking about the Clean Water Act, as well as some of the main pollutants in the Hoosic and Housatonic watersheds here in Berkshire County. And then she'll briefly touch on policy as well that improves water quality. And if you'd like to learn more about that or register, you can find it on our event calendar. And I think that's actually all I have to say. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it off to the presenter this evening, who is Zach Adams. So thank you so much for being here, Zach. I also don't know what's going on with my voice. I'm like slowly losing it as I speak, it seems. So sorry about that, everyone.
Thanks, Chelsea. Thanks, everybody. I'm really excited to be here tonight and share with you everything I have to share. So I'm going to just pull up my screen. All righty, everybody. So like I said, I'm excited to speak with you all tonight. Thanks so much for having me, BEAT. This is going to be a lot of fun. My goal really tonight is to bring maybe a new view to the Mass Audubon Sanctuaries and, help make your experience richer and, ways you can dive a little deeper into exploring the nature and the ecosystems at our sanctuaries. I'm going to really talk about our sanctuaries out here in the Berkshires. And I think what makes this fun is that being an educator for Mass Audubon, I'm at these sanctuaries all the time. And so I have not just my educator's lens on when I'm at the sanctuaries, but the all other lenses and hats that I like to put on while I'm out and about. So I like to, in a way, it's kind of sharing my personal little tips to exploring and deepening your experience at the sanctuaries. So we're going to start with maybe you think of Mass Audubon Sanctuaries as driving down a dirt road like this. 2 miles down a dirt road, and if it's in the springtime, it's muddy. In the winter, it's icy or snowy. And then you get to this old building in the middle of nowhere, and that's Pleasant Valley. And so Pleasant Valley is a fun sanctuary. We like to say it's our flagship sanctuary in the Berkshires, but it's really an important one because it's our oldest sanctuary in the Berkshires, over 90 years old, and it's got a rich history as well as a rich natural history, and there's a lot to see and explore here. And I think my favorite fact, or a little tidbit that I like to share about Pleasant Valley, that I think really makes it special, is that the trails really only cover half to less than half of the sanctuary itself. With close to, if not over 1,500 acres, the sanctuary doesn't even touch, or the trails don't even touch most of the sanctuary. And I think that's what makes it so special, because you can have an amazing time at Pleasant Valley and hike to the fire tower and walk around the beaver ponds. But then at the end of the day, so much of the sanctuary is just there to let nature do what it does, right? Actually, why Pleasant Valley was formed. And so I'll give a brief little history of Pleasant Valley. Over 90 years ago, started by the roadside committee of the Lennox Garden Club. And most people know it as the bird sanctuary, but it's much more than that. But it was started as the bird and wildlife or wildflower sanctuary. And that was their thought too, is that we're going to let nature do what it does. But it means that, you also have to take stock of the age of Pleasant Valley, and that 90 years means most of the forest is only 90 years old too. So we're not, it's a lush, beautiful forest, but we're also not looking at a 400-year-old old growth forest. But before you even leave the door of Pleasant Valley, we have our native pollinator gardens. And so, I often think when I'm at Pleasant Valley, I don't go very far. And that's usually a sign of something good because there's so much to see here. And the pollinator garden is really, really rich in the summertime, just like the hummingbird moths here. Should also share that all of these photos are photos I've taken on the sanctuaries over time. So it's fun, again, for me to be able to share those with you all as well. But our pollinator garden is growing, and so now there's different sections of it and different plantings and different parts of the pollinator garden, and it's kept up by a lot of volunteers. And I'll get to the volunteer part in a little bit. But Pleasant Valley, like I said, it's this really cool place where you can feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, but being so close to everything. And I like this photo here because you don't see anything but the forest and the pond. And then if you look way over to the right, you see the little boardwalk there. And that's unfortunately our boardwalk that's out of commission right now due to the big microburst we had this past year. And so this site now is peopleless for the time being, but that'll shortly change. But when you're looking out here in the height of summer, you see how wild it really is, and you see the thick, rich hillside. And I think the other part that I like to think about with Pleasant Valley is it's a really good one to explore at different times of year and watch how it changes, and watch how what you see changes and your experience changes. And I think when you start to really, come into what the seasons are and what you notice and don't notice from the last time you've been there, you're really starting that journey of deepening your experience. You're taking it seriously. And I like to sometimes say that there's different ways to think about it. You're going for a hike, you're going for a walk, or you're going for a stroll. I'm a big stroller. I'm not a stroller, but I'm into going for strolls, because that generally for me means that I have no clue where I'm going, and my pace is just barely 1 foot in front of the other. And Pleasant Valley lets you do that, because in all the nooks and crannies, there's something really cool to see. This is the same pond from a different angle, looking just as misty and moody as it can be. And of course, the summit to Pleasant Valley is one of the main attractions here. Looking out over the Taconics and over Richmond Pond, it's a great place to be in the summertime, where it's cooler and there's wind coming up over the mountain, and in the fall where you get the the rich foliage across the valley. But again, it's a journey up there. So you're probably going to have to use that hike verb. But what I like about getting to the top is that you're going through some really interesting ecosystems along the way. You get to watch as the forest ecosystem changes the higher the elevation you get. And even though we're not looking at the elevation of Greylock, you can still see changes happening and sections of the forest that look really different. Um, I always suggest for people to go, if you can, if it's not winter time, go up Trail of the Legends, because you go through an amazing hemlock forest that's old. It's probably one of the oldest sections of forest on the sanctuary, and the hemlocks on top of it's almost a plateau on top of the ridge are craggly and knotty, and they twist and turn, and it's a feeling that it has an energy up there that's really tremendous. And so the top of Pleasant Valley on the heading up to through the Trail of Legends is really the way to get here, and you get rewarded with the nice view of the summit. But now that I've talked about landscape a bit, Pleasant Valley really is a rich, just one of our richest Mass Audubon sites, actually across the state, as far as biological diversity. But here in the Berkshires too, it is such a rich site, and a lot of people come for our beavers. But the really cool thing is that beavers aren't just these big funny rodents that are slapping their tails in the water that are fun to see. But it's a super important part about Pleasant Valley's history, because this is one of the first places that beavers were reintroduced to Massachusetts. And so, without getting into too much of the story, I always like to share the bit that there was three beavers that they brought from out west, and they were named Paul Bunyan, Paula Bunyan, and the Big Swede. So three beavers that helped start it all. But today they're a really important part of the ecosystem at Pleasant Valley, and the beaver ponds are my favorite places to walk around. I lead tons of beaver programs throughout the year, and even when I'm not leading beaver programs, I'm leading beaver programs because they are so much fun to see and explore, and there's new activity always happening around the pond. And when you're down here and you're on we call this, just to the right of this photo, the Long Bridge, and you're down on the Long Bridge and you're standing there, you never know what you're going to see. I've been doing moonlight walks, where we've watched the moon rise from the bridge at night. I've been looking for beavers with people. We've had night hawks fly and catch insects over the pond. This is one of my favorite places at Pleasant Valley. But right on the edge of what we call the way outs, and that is just past this pond. We call it the way outs because it takes a long time to get out there. But it is the quietest part of Pleasant Valley, and you are tucked back in a section of forest that fewer hikers get to. So that's a fun area to explore. But the other cool thing about Pleasant Valley is that it was actually one of the first salamander sanctuaries, and it really does have some great salamanders, from the vernal pool salamanders, like the spotted salamanders, to people have found spring salamanders, and we always find two-line salamanders and dusky salamanders. So if the amphibian life here is as rich as the forest and the views and the plants as well. And we can't forget about the incredible diversity of plants and unusual occurring plant species in Massachusetts as well. And again, the salamanders here are awesome. Another four-toed salamander here that is a cool one to see. And now we're right in the heart, right in the beginning probably of salamander movement. So keep an eye out on the roads. And just coming up shortly, we're also going to be hearing the sounds of the amphibians in the wetlands, and that's going to be a fun transition as we go from the quiet pond to the pond that's filled with peepers, by the vernal pool filled with wood frogs, and hopefully wood ducks flying through the wetlands that the beavers have created so it's Pleasant Valley. It really is a special place that you can see a lot and do a lot and go to a lot of different types of places. And here's another little tidbit I like to throw in about the diversity here is that the previous director, Renee Laubach, apparently recorded over 50 dragonfly species at Pleasant Valley, which is remarkable. So again, the Pleasant Valley is this amazing rich place, and if you're looking for birds in the winter, you might think, well, I don't know about that, but for the whole ecosystem, you really can find and see a lot and get a lot of bang for your buck. So now that I've talked about Pleasant Valley till the cows came home, I'll move to Canoe Meadows. So Canoe Meadows is smaller than Pleasant Valley, but has similar amounts of richness. And what I really like about Canoe Meadows is it has this nice transition from upland grassland to wetland to river bottom to white pine forest, and you can see a lot of stuff here. And if you're looking for birds, Canoe Meadows is the place to go. This is one of my favorite birding sanctuaries that we have at Mass Audubon. Keeping our Friday bird walks are starting in April here, and it can be really amazing. Um, I'll share some just brief stories here of what makes it so amazing, and one time I was out here, actually just this past week or 2 weekends ago, we did um, a winter raptors program where we sat on top of the hill at Canoe Meadows and hoped to see raptors flying about, but didn't see any hawks at all, or eagles, or anything. Only one raven, not even a turkey vulture. But what we did is we then walked down the hill into the hemlock and white pine forest, and we had a saw-whet owl fly within a few feet of our heads. Um, and so that's just one story. Another story I'll share here is just down in this wetland. We have a nice little boardwalk through the wetland, and that is not just a great place to see and hear birds, but when you're there, the birds are close to you because the boardwalk goes right through a nice little row of willows and other wetland trees and shrubs, and those shrubs are all short. The birds are right next to you. So I've done bird walks here in the morning where we've had blackpoll warblers within 3 feet of us, but there's multiple of them, so everybody has a blackpoll warbler right next to them, except you can't see them because the shrubs are so dense, but you can just hear their subtle little. So, like I said, you can really go and have a ton of fun with the birds at Canoe Meadows. There's really an amazing opportunity to see a huge diversity of bird life. And here's another important part about Canoe Meadows is our community gardens. This is a place that is special for a lot of people that come here and for the community gardens, but also because it is a peaceful place and just a short distance from downtown Pittsfield, really. It is right here on top of the sanctuary. In fact, you can even see Pleasant Valley from the right angle. But the community gardens are actually a place where I've transitioned to doing a lot of programs from woodcock programs coming up in the next week or two to common nighthawk watches in August. And the phrase I always use is, even if we don't see anything, at least we're here at the community gardens with the view, because the sunset here is incredible. But on top of that, we are always seeing amazing wildlife here. If it's not deer in the field, it's incredible birds that are moving from October Mountain State Forest, into some of the more suburban areas. It's such a cool opportunity, and this pavilion here makes a great program space. And if any of you have been on any of my programs here lately, we really had a lot of fun just in enjoying watching the evening set or the mornings. And now let's move to Lime Kiln Farm. So Lime Kiln is our sanctuary down in Sheffield, probably about the size of Canoe Meadows. Again, incredibly rich. These three sanctuaries are some of our absolutely top richest sanctuaries at Mass Audubon. Really, especially for rare plant species. These are really rich places, and I mean, in comparison to over 100 sanctuaries at Mass Audubon across the state. And Limekiln is not is right up there, right? It's really great. And the cool thing about Limekiln is you can see the impact that that has on the rest of the ecosystem. The other part about Limekiln that's special is you can see that there's it gets hayed and there's still bits of pasture land here. So what I describe Limekiln as watching the forest return to forest, because in between the fields are what began as cedar hedgerows and are slowly being reclaimed by older forests. So you have this transition of secession from grassland to sections of mature hemlock forest, even at Limekiln. Um, and on top of that, almost the whole sanctuary is surrounded by wetland, and that's what's really cool. And this is again really rich wetland with sensitive species in at some places, and the bird life is incredible. But again, you can see the whole how that impacts the whole ecosystem, because the insects at Limekiln are really great. And my big experiences with butterflies there. I actually learned butterflies by doing my first butterfly count at Limekiln, and at the time I didn't know anything about butterflies. I was told to take pictures, use this book, Butterfly by Binoculars, and it's addicting, and you learn them pretty quickly. And some of them are social, like this tawny emperor here, a really fairly rare butterfly in Berkshire County. I felt kind of like I was hitting gold the first time I ever I ever looked for butterflies. But again, it shows you this whole cycle of diversity here, from the plants to the insects, and it's a really good place for wood nymphs as well. And this is a butterfly that is pretty common, but at Limekiln, it's incredible. I've seen hundreds of them in one day at Limekiln. I mean, that's really special to think about, seeing hundreds of butterflies. Um, and these are noticeable. They're this cryptic dark butterfly with a big yellow spot on the wing. So you notice them. They almost look like hummingbirds or birds at some points, but um, they're they're really cool to watch and to explore, and they give you really great looks. So if there's a butterfly to get started on, this is a good one at Limekiln. But again, insect life here is incredible, and then with it goes the birds. This there's amazing flycatchers at Limekiln. The owls at Limekiln are really fantastic as well. Probably the best owl spot I know of. They usually saw-whet owls spend their winters there, and barred owls and great horned owls are all really common. There it's like not unusual to hear two or three species of owls all at once. And you wouldn't believe it because it's down in Sheffield and down in farmland, but it comes with a view. These views at Limekiln, it just is. It's funny. It's just this little hill above wetlands, and you can see just about all the way to Greylock. And on top of that, you have these amazing views of Mount Everett. It's really cool. And in the wintertime, with less tree leaves on the trees, right, you get this amazing sweeping view, and the snow really lights things up as well. But now, no, now that I've kind of, talked about the sanctuaries and how I see them and what goes through my head there. There's a little bit behind the scenes here I want to share, and the conservation side of things. And this is an important story to tell, of that it's a rich history of volunteers and people that care about Mass Audubon. But at Pleasant Valley, these are all people that have had some connection with Pleasant Valley throughout their lives, and that's super special. This was our 90th anniversary celebration, right? So people of all generations have this background with Pleasant Valley, from going to nature camp, from working there, to having people like Marilyn Floor, a longtime naturalist and teacher, coming into the schools, right? And I mean, that's the story here about Pleasant Valley is it's about people too, right? We have this rich history of it, and the volunteer work that happens at Pleasant Valley and has happened at Pleasant Valley is monumental. This is what helps those pollinator gardens look so beautiful throughout the year, right? This is what helps, keep the trails clean. This is how we know what trees are down on trails. And it makes everybody's experience, valuable there. And it lets you take that deeper view, see those hawk moths right in that at the beginning of your walk. And like I said, the volunteer work goes throughout the year too, from cleaning up the pollinator gardens to helping to plant them when they need replanted. We actually had voles tear apart almost the whole garden this past year. So it'll be a new process of regrowing in those gardens. And but more behind the scenes is that not only does it come with volunteer work, and you can see the gardens even here in fall are really lush and thick. Um, but it comes with other work too, right? Where our new restrooms, our addition to the Pleasant Valley barn are open now, right? And we went through a period of time where there was mud, there was fencing, our all persons trail was out of commission. And those are some of the kind of the labor pains of making it more accessible, right? That's the whole idea behind the addition of the barn is accessibility. So more people can experience Pleasant Valley in the way that they can, right? In the way that they can do their best and what's easiest for them. And that's why we called the project Opening Doors to Nature, because it gave more opportunities. But again, came with a lot of hard work too. And then some of it can be frustrating because there's a reason why we don't have dogs at our sanctuaries. And though not everybody agrees with that, there's also a reason for that. And that's because dogs and dog scent really has an impact on wildlife, especially if we think about small sanctuaries like Canoe Meadows or Limekiln, where those are small sanctuaries, only a few hundred acres. And it can have a really big impact on especially other dogs in the landscape, coyotes and foxes. And then at Pleasant Valley, where we have such a rich and sensitive ecosystem at places, it also has a really big impact. And you can see people don't always like that. And it's, that's kind of a behind the scenes constant struggle to try to not prevent people from experiencing nature, but understanding that there's reasons why we make tough decisions like not allowing dogs, because some people do feel safer and feel more comfortable with dogs, and that's super valuable. But it's a balance that we're trying to maintain, and for our sanctuaries we don't allow dogs, but it's a tricky dynamic there. And then there's the bits of what's too close to wildlife sometimes, right? And this is actually a dark-eyed junco on the top of Lenox Summit that was looking for food from me, sitting on the benches, and I'd never experienced it before, but it must have been fed by hikers on their way up to the top, and it was the first time I had seen it. And so it's interesting to think about how maybe one individual bird may be impacted by people, right? Your impact might only go to one individual bird, but that's a big impact, right? Changing the behavior of one animal, that's really impressive. But then there's valuable parts of experiencing birds close up, right? That's why we have bird feeders as well. And plants at Pleasant Valley are a special thing, and this is one plant I'm allowed to talk about because it was actually planted at Pleasant Valley. It isn't a wild growing plant. It was brought to Pleasant Valley, the showy lady slippers. And I think that's one thing that I find really cool is that showy lady slippers are an incredibly rare plant in Massachusetts. But you can go and see them right by the boardwalk. And that's cool because it's bridging that gap between experiencing rare species, protecting them, and then getting people to see them and experience. That's super important, to see this beautiful flower at Pleasant Valley when we're all in the office and people are like, oh, the showy lady slippers bloomed yet? Because it's an event, right? It's something to see. And it's right there. And then there's the science part of a lot of this too, and conservation and landscape management. And this is in the middle of the grassland at Canoe Meadows. And what you don't see here is 150 80-foot tall white pines, because this is where we had to make the difficult decision to remove trees to help improve bobolink habitat. And though that seems like it's only single species focused, grassland are declining across Massachusetts, and grassland birds are in a massive decline across all of North America. The report on the bird decline in the last 50 years shows grassland birds declining by over 50%. And bobolinks are at the top of that, or at the top end of that list as well. So at Mass Audubon, we really take a lot of effort to helping bobolinks where they are and where they're thriving in ecosystems. And there's lots of ways, from the bobolink project to, where people are trying to help get people to change cutting regimes on private property, but to managing grasslands, mowing grasslands the right way for the bobolink population to be successful. And this is where we've always engaged our intern corps, right? We have a legacy of interns at Pleasant Valley, and here we are in the morning surveying the bobolink. So not only did we do that management, but then we monitor it as well. And so it's a cool opportunity to bring our interns up into the field to do bobolink point counts. And let me tell you what, it's intimidating when you have 30 bobolinks in the air all at once singing, and you're trying to count males and females and how far away they are. It's intimidating. So it's a really great experience and a way to get thrown into the fire of bird point counts. And this is our intern from this past year, Alex Green, put together this presentation. Our interns present on what they find. And so we have data sets not just for the bobolinks, but for our redback salamander surveys, for our bluebird box monitoring. So we have data that we're collecting here. This is a huge project that happens, and this is really important data that's collected. And if we'll zoom in here, we can start to see what the numbers look like of the bobolinks. And I don't have numbers going all the way back to pre-cutting, but I know that the numbers I've been told are that it was in the handfuls, it was single digits of bobolinks before the management took place. And now you can see the numbers have leveled out a little bit this last year with a little bit of a dip, but I don't know if we can say too much about that yet until seeing some more data. It takes a little bit of time to fizzle out, but it shows us that we maybe could be doing more management on the grassland where there's shrubs that grew up where the trees used to be. All right. And also it gives us little hints to other things happening in the landscape. This is a cool graph here that Alex put together, showing the change over time in one season of bobolinks. And all of a sudden, there was 100 in one day, right? And what that is showing when bobolinks are really starting to group up as they go on migration. And so, she recorded over 200 in one of the points, which, really, really amazing. All right. And like I said, the salamander survey here this is at Canoe Meadows as well, is a pretty cool survey because we've been doing it all across Mass Audubon at different sanctuaries. And we've got this really cool graph showing number of individuals and temperature as well. So a really interesting correlation here happening. So there's valuable data that comes out of this. And one last little behind the scenes project I'll show you, and this is probably my favorite project that I've been involved with at Mass Audubon, and that's the Sackett Brook Restoration Project. And this is a long time project, right? You can see, kind of it began with a dam removal in 2013 and riparian tree planting in 2013. But it was going on long before that with planning to take out that dam. Removing a dam is quite a project, even for a small one. So it began with that, and from that dam removal, there's been a huge amount of continuing work. Next steps being more planting happening even post 2013. Then the removal of the old cabin that sat in the floodplain. I see a sad face there, but it sat in the floodplain of Sackett Brook and regularly flooded. So not good for the building, but also for resiliency of the floodplain. And then now on top of that, we're continually planting that area for riparian species. And we're live staking, and that's a cool project of taking clippings from willows and dogwoods and literally just hammering them into the ground. And it's successful in some places, and it's ways that we engage volunteers as well. So this is a really cool project that's been going on for a long time and is continuing to go on, and it's a really cool restoration project that you can see the positive impacts. Our senior regional scientist, Tom Lautzenheiser, tells the story, and I love the story. The dam was removed, and he went into the stream in his muck boots to see how things were, and he looked down, and in between his feet, a slimy sculpin swam between his feet, and he realized that was probably the first time in 50 years that a slimy sculpin was able to move up and down that section of the stream, and that is conservation success and restoration success. So with that, everybody, no, not yet. One more slide. Think about the idea behind restoring these waterways to cold streams, right? And there's a lot of species at risk, in particular a brook trout that is incredibly temperature dependent, needing temperatures below 65 degrees to survive. And so what we do by planting and by dam removal is really having positive impacts on these species. So with that, everybody, now I'll get to my questions. Thanks a lot for listening, and I hope you dive a little bit deeper into the sanctuaries. And I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. That was fantastic. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I know there were a couple.
I see one in the chat.
Yeah, a couple in the chat. Are you taking a look at those? Do you want me to?
Yeah. So the first one I see here is that are there handicapped accessible walking paths in these? And Pleasant Valley does have an all-persons trail, which is accessible, but unfortunately, due to storm damage, it is not in accessible shape at the moment. And that's part of a project that is, hopefully going to be completed within the next year or two, where we can get that back up and running. That's a big, that was a really devastating blow to have the all-persons trail and the boardwalk wiped out at Pleasant Valley. It's really realistically hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage. But it means that we're not able to open the doors to nature as well as we want. All right, I see another one here. Do you have any words of wisdom to help quell my disappointment that English sparrows move into my birdhouses instead of bluebirds or the other species? I have some tips and thoughts. Sparrows are a tough one. House sparrows are a tough one because they are just hardy, and they don't really migrate, so that doesn't help either. But one thing is that say house wrens are really one that will also prey upon the nest. But the important thing with house wrens, it often works for house sparrows as well. Both of them like shrubbery. They like dense, thick, viney shrub, messy stuff. So if you can keep the bluebird boxes as far away from that as possible, that does an incredible amount of deterring house wrens and house sparrows. Like I said, house sparrows are a little tougher because they're so hardy, but house wrens are like a no-go in the middle of a field. They're too small, and the house sparrows are shrubby birds too, so they don't want to be out in the middle of a field. So as far away as you can get from any kind of shrubs and vines is really going to have a huge impact on preventing that nest predation. And with that, mowing underneath those boxes and trimming those from underneath those boxes is really important. And then on top of that, I would say too, having two boxes up is really important. The tree swallows will take one box for sure, and then they will defend the other box. They won't let another tree swallow nest in it, but they will let bluebirds. But they will defend it against house sparrows because house sparrows will take their nest, and they'll defend it against house wrens because house wrens are nest predators too. So those are my tips, and I think with that can have a really good impact on your bluebird success. Two boxes out in the middle of a field, keeping them nice and clean. I see a question about barberry at Pleasant Valley. Invasive species, I'm sure you've all heard it, are just they're tough. They're a really tough battle that's always ongoing. At Pleasant Valley, there's some sections of barberry that are horrendous. And absolutely, we do have management plans, but those size patches of invasives are super costly. So those plans are in there if there's funding for it. I will say that there's sections of Pleasant Valley that are planned to get management done on the nearer side. For example, as we restore our all persons trail in the boardwalk, there is a lot of honeysuckle there. So that's one restoration project that's on the forefront that's going to happen coming with that. So that's a big one. And of course, hardy kiwi is another one that we really try to manage and really try to monitor as well. But I do understand barberry is a really tough one, and really costly. When will volunteer opportunities start up again? Great question. And they're starting up in April. So come April, we're going to have our volunteer days. There's probably about 3 or 4 happening between April and May, from cleaning up the community gardens to getting them ready for planting. And we have some at Pleasant Valley as well, working on the pollinator garden. So those are coming up in April, are the first ones. I think it's the 15th or 16th of April is the first one. That's all on our website as well, massaudubon.org/Pleasant Valley. And you can go to, it'll probably be actually under volunteer opportunities, but also under programs, because we'll ask people to sign up for that as well. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you find eastern meadowlarks at Canoe Meadows?
No, that's the goal. That's the golden nugget of grassland birds. At least, at Mass Audubon, they've tried really hard. So before I was even at Mass Audubon, one of our top ornithologists at Mass Audubon brought in decoys and brought in sounds. They played sounds, but the likelihood is it's just not big enough. The grassland size is not big enough. Bobolinks have a size requirement of grassland that's much less than that. It's something like 15 to 30 acres of grassland, and meadowlarks, they just need more than that. There's meadowlarks at the Pittsfield Airport, and there's some in South County as well, though I don't know where they're breeding in South County, but they can be found around the Cobble area, the Bartholomew's Cobble. But I couldn't point to like a field that they're nesting in, but they're seen around there in migration and sometimes in the summertime too.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I see a question here about staging areas and cleanup. I am not the cleanup person to ask. Becky Cushing, who's out on family leave right now, is the one to ask about that. She's been sitting on all the all that talk and negotiation, so that's a good one to ask about that. But that's the last I heard as well, that is a possible staging area. Possible is the word. Oh, I see Jane's got a question.
Well, just sort of a comment. Sorry to be somewhat disappointed that the cabin is gone, just because I grew up playing there before it was Canoe Meadows. But I agree, from a wildlife standpoint and an ecological standpoint, it's the best thing.
It's a tough one. It's and you're not the only one who I've heard similar things to. People that have lived there. I think the other thing that comes with that removal is the discontinuation of the road as well. So that's additional resiliency measures that are in place because of that.
And all in all, I fully support it.
Thank you.
Zach, I have a question. This is Sharon. Now, you had mentioned that the at Pleasant Valley, that the trail by the boardwalk is closed. Will any of the other trails be open this season?
Yep, just about everything else is open. So there's 2 trails higher up on the hillside. Ravine and Waycross are out of commission right now because and you can, from the right angle in the wintertime, you can see the path of the storm, of the microburst. So you can see there's over 100 trees down. So those are out. Then we've got some wet spots around the beaver ponds, because the beavers are really doing some good work there. But everything else is open.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yep. And you can even go on the backside of Pikes Pond. It's just the boardwalk section, really, that is.
Right, any other questions? Going once.
Tangential, anyone know about the boardwalk at Parsons Marsh? Is that one still going strong?
Yeah, since last time I was there, yep. Yep. That's a fun one. Quiet in the winter time though.
Is that BNRC? Is that who? Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I know there's skunk cabbage out there too. So winter's a good time for it.
I'm the trail monitor for Parsons Marsh, and there's people there just about every time I go to check on it or to put in more pamphlets.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
It's a very short trail, but it's so nice.
If you go, instead of crossing the bridge, keep going straight. That was the original trail, and it goes down into a beautiful meadow. And you'll see a trail cutting off of that goes up on top of the hill, which was originally in the plans to make into a more formal trail, but you can see it's been flagged and it's been walked on quite a bit. So there is more than just the one trail going on the boardwalk.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Awesome.
Good to know. All right, does anyone have any other questions? All right.
Well, thank you, Zach. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Zach.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Everyone for being
Have a great
here.
rest of your evening.
Thank you. That was great.
Thanks for having me here.
Thank you for
Thank you.
taking the time.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.